Welcome to Life Stories, where we dive into real, heartfelt journeys of transformation, resilience, and empowerment. Today, we bring you the story of Emily, a woman who, after being betrayed by the person she trusted most, finds the strength to rebuild her life and rise above the pain. It's a story of love, loss, and the powerful lessons learned along the way. Sit back, relax, and join us as we unfold Emily's journey of rediscovery and self-empowerment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story and receive more inspiring tales from Life Stories. The taxi came to a slow stop outside the house I had once called my sanctuary. I stepped out, expecting the familiar embrace of home to welcome me back after a long and tiring business trip. Instead, what greeted me was a scene so horrific. It felt like the ground beneath me had been ripped away. There, sprawled across the pavement, was my luggage, my life in tatters. My clothes were spilling out, my luxury bags tossed aside carelessly, like items of no worth. Even my personal items, books, photo albums, and pieces of jewelry that held years of memories, were scattered like garbage, left out to be trampled upon by the world. The humiliation of it stung in ways I had never experienced. But it wasn't the sight of my things on the pavement that truly cut me to the core. It was the sound that came from within the house. The sound of laughter. I didn't need to guess whose laughter it was. Jake's low chuckle followed the mocking, high-pitched voice of Carly. I had suspected for months. But Jake had always sworn that Carly was just a friend. Now, here I was, standing on the street, unable to breathe as everything I had built, my love, my trust, my future, shattered in an instant. My hands trembled, the suitcases feeling heavier in my grip. My instinct screamed at me to storm inside, to confront them, to scream and shout, to unleash every ounce of the pain I had been holding in. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as my world came crashing down. In that moment, I realized that anger would only fuel their amusement, their sense of victory. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Without a word, I turned, walked back to the taxi, and slid into the back seat. The driver, a kind older man, glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes soft with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, as though afraid that speaking too loudly might break me even further. No, I wasn't okay. My entire world had just crumbled. The man I had trusted, the man I had given everything to, had thrown me away for someone else. But I wouldn't cry. Not here, not now. I inhaled sharply, forcing back the sting of tears that burned in my eyes. "Just drive," I whispered, my voice steady, more steady than I had thought possible. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But I wouldn't let them see me broken. As the taxi pulled away, leaving behind the house I had worked so hard to build, a place I had once dreamed would be my forever, I knew that I was no longer the woman who had stepped out of that house with hope in her heart. I was now someone else, someone who could face this betrayal with calm control. They had discarded me like an unwanted object, but they had no idea what was coming next. The hotel room I arrived at was dimly lit, cold in a way that matched the emptiness I felt inside. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall as I tried to process everything that had just happened. How had it come to this? I had been a devoted wife, standing by Jake through thick and thin, believing in the vows we had made. And yet, here I was, discarded like an old pair of shoes, left to pick up the pieces of my life while he moved on with Carly. The woman he had sworn was just a friend. Tears threatened to spill, but I clenched my fists, refusing to let them fall. Crying wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't change the fact that Jake had replaced me with someone who was everything I was not: younger, more exciting, more disposable. The betrayal ran deeper than the affair itself. It was the realization that for years, I had been sleeping next to a stranger. Someone who had been lying to me every single day. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over Jake's number. What would I even say? That I still loved him? That I wanted to fix something that was already beyond repair? No, I couldn't. I had loved him with everything I had. And now, I was nothing to him. He had thrown me away without a second thought. I dropped the phone on the nightstand, my jaw tightening with determination. I refused to be the woman begging him to choose me. He had already made his choice. Slowly, I stood up and walked toward the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked broken. Her eyes, once full of hope, now seemed lifeless. But deep within those eyes, I saw something else, something stronger. Determination. Carly thought she had won. Jake thought he had won. But I was about to show them something they didn't understand. I wasn't going to fight with tears. I wasn't going to plead for an explanation. I was going to take back everything they had taken from me. You will not break, I whispered to my reflection. And for the first time since walking away, I felt something other than pain. I felt ready, ready to rise, ready to rebuild, ready to show them what true power looked like. The next few days passed in a blur of cold clarity. I could barely bring myself to look at the pile of documents and photographs strewn across the desk. But I knew I had to do it. I had to find a way to make them pay for what they had done to me. For the years of betrayal. For the false promises. For the life that had been ripped from my grasp without even a second thought. It was Mason, the old acquaintance I had once dismissed as just another man from my past, who had come through for me. He had always seen something in me that I didn't fully recognize myself. He had warned me about Jake all those years ago. But I had been too blinded by love to listen. Now, Mason was my ally in this war. Jake's not as clever as he thinks. Mason had told me when we met at the coffee shop. His voice steady as he slid a folder in front of me. There's a lot more going on than you think. And you're not alone in this. I'll help you, Emily. I hadn't asked for help. I hadn't wanted to trust anyone again. But Mason was right. I wasn't going to win this battle by playing nice. I wasn't going to let Jake and Carly walk away from this unscathed. And I certainly wasn't going to let them get away with what they had done to me. I opened the folder, feeling a strange chill run down my spine as I glanced at the papers inside. Bank statements, credit card transactions, hotel reservations, and there, in black and white, was proof that Jake had been spending money on Carly for months, gifts, getaways, even a secret apartment in Carly's name. My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents, the weight of the betrayal growing heavier with each new revelation. Thousands of dollars spent on Carly. While I had been working, planning our future, Jake had been building one with her. The pain in my chest felt suffocating. But beneath it, something else began to simmer. A slow, burning rage that refused to be ignored. So how long has this been going on? I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the fury that was slowly consuming me. Almost a year, Mason said. Maybe longer. I laughed bitterly. The absurdity of it all hit me like a punch. While I had been dreaming of a life together, Jake had been planning his escape with someone else. But no more. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I stood up, my body rigid with resolve. I need more than this, I said, my voice sharp with purpose. I need leverage. Mason nodded and slid another paper across the table. You're going to love this. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked at the document. It wasn't about Carly anymore. It was about Jake. About what he had taken from me. A forged property deed. The house that I had paid for with my own money. The house we had shared. Now, legally, it was in Jake's name. Without my consent. The cold realization washed over me like ice water. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He had stolen from me. You thought I would break, didn't you? I whispered to myself as I read the document again. The edges of the paper crumpling under my fingers. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Mason gave me a knowing look. It's not just about the house, Emily. It's about taking back everything they took from you. All of it. And I was going to. I wasn't just fighting for my house. I was fighting for my dignity. For the respect they thought they could strip away. I walked out of the coffee shop with a new sense of determination. The battle ahead would be long. And it would be ugly. But I was ready. I would show them all that I was not the woman they had thrown away. I was a force. And they were going to learn exactly what that meant. The legal battle was more than just a fight for property or money. It was a fight for my very soul. Every day felt like I was digging into the depths of my own pain. Pulling up all the fragments of the woman I used to be. The woman who trusted. Who loved with everything she had. And each time, those fragments felt a little less like me and a little more like the person I was becoming. Someone stronger. Someone unbreakable. The days in the lawyer's office blurred into one another as we carefully constructed the case against Jake. My lawyer, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, was my anchor in this storm. This isn't just about fraud. She would tell me, her voice steady. This is about reclaiming your life. The house is just the beginning. Each piece of evidence we gathered, each email and bank statement and fraudulent document, brought us closer to the truth. The truth that Jake had stolen from me in every way imaginable. And the deeper we dug, the more it became clear that he hadn't just ruined our marriage, he had built an empire of lies on top of it. But through it all, I felt something I hadn't expected, strength. Not the kind of strength that comes from anger or vengeance, but the kind that comes from facing the truth and knowing, deep down, that I had the power to change my story. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I was in control. As the case moved forward, the pressure on Jake and Carly began to build. They couldn't see it yet, but their world was about to collapse in on itself. Jake continued to act as if nothing was wrong, as if I would just fade into the background, forgotten, but I wasn't going anywhere. The reality of my resolve began to sink in. Meanwhile, Carly, the woman who had once mocked me, who had stolen my life and my love, was losing her grip on her own carefully constructed facade. She had never imagined that someone like me would fight back. She thought I would cry, beg for Jake's love, or fade away into the shadows. But instead, she found herself facing a woman who was not just surviving, but thriving. I remember the day we served Jake with the divorce papers. His expression was one of disbelief, as though he couldn't comprehend that I was no longer the woman he could control. That I was no longer the woman he could throw away without consequence. I didn't feel the satisfaction I had imagined. I didn't feel like celebrating. But I did feel something. Something better than revenge. It was peace. Jake's business associates began pulling away. He lost clients. He lost everything. And Carly, who had once been so confident in her ability to replace me, found herself abandoned, no longer the shining star in Jake's world. For the first time, she realized what it felt like to be discarded. I stood tall through it all. I wasn't just fighting for the house or the money, I was fighting for my dignity. For the woman I had become. The woman who didn't need Jake or Carly or anyone else to define her worth. And when the final judgment came, and I was awarded the house, I felt no triumph, no joy, just a sense of completion. I had fought my battle. And I had won, not against them, but for myself. The real victory came later, when I realized that forgiveness wasn't about them. It was never about them. Forgiveness was for me. It was about letting go of the weight they had placed on my shoulders, so that I could walk forward unburdened. As I walked away from that chapter of my life, I knew that I was ready for whatever came next. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and now I was whole again. This was no longer about getting back at Jake or Carly. It was about living for myself. I had reclaimed my power. And no one, not Jake, not Carly, could ever take that away from me. As I stood at the window of my new office, watching the city below, I felt a deep sense of peace settle in my chest. The woman I had once been, broken by betrayal and discarded without a second thought, no longer existed. She had been replaced by someone stronger, someone wiser. My journey had been long and painful, but it had shaped me into the woman I was today, confident, independent, and unshakable. The phone buzzed on my desk. A message from an old friend inviting me to a gala that night. It was a celebration for women in business. And for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged. Not because of anyone else, but because I had earned it. I had built this life on my own terms. And now, I was being recognized for it. As I made my way to the event, I thought back to all the dark days when I had doubted myself. When I had wondered if I would ever find a way out of the pain. But here I was, standing tall, surrounded by people who admired me for the strength I had built through my struggles. This wasn't just a victory over Jake and Carly. It was a victory over myself. And as I entered the gala, my heart light with newfound freedom, I knew that no matter what the future held, I was ready. I had learned the greatest lesson of all, that healing comes not from revenge, but from self-respect, resilience, and the courage to rise above it all. Thank you for following my story. If you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on post notifications so you never miss an update. Life stories are waiting to be told.